All right, we are officially live. Hello, arty peoples, and welcome to another episode of Jerry's Live. My name is Emmy Klein. I'm your host this evening, and as you can see, we have a guest today. So everybody want to welcome Dana Brown, and you are, correct me if I'm wrong, the product and education manager for Ampersand Art Supply, right?
That's right.
Perfect. Well, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Emmy. Thanks, Jerry's Artorama. I'm glad for this opportunity.
It's going to be an amazing show. Now, Dana actually has really wonderful information for us to have no matter what type of artist you are. I'm very excited for what you're about to go over. So everyone be paying attention. But if you are interested in anything Dana is going over today, make sure to go to the website, jerrysartorama.com, and type in today's class code, which is JL311. So JL311. If you type that in the search bar at the top of the page, the teacher's cart should come up and you should be able to find everything there. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to you, Dana, and I'm going to get myself out of here.
Thanks. Thanks, Emmy. Appreciate the introduction. As she said, my name is Dana Brown. I'm the product and education manager at Ampersand Art Supply. Ampersand Art Supply, we've been making premium quality archival art panels for almost 30 years. We started with gesso board, started with Claybord, and now we have 13 different surfaces ranging from gesso board for oils and acrylics up to things like aquaboard for watercolor. We're making these panels here near Austin, Texas. And we found years ago that the frames that were on the market were not designed to accommodate wooden panels. So we took it upon ourselves to enter the frame arena with floater frame. And so what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be going through how to frame your cradled panel using floater frame, but I'm also going to show you how to mount a print to a flat Claybord, and then how to take that uncradled flat panel and frame that using floater frame as well. So what is a floater frame? A floater frame is a style of frame in which the artwork can be seen completely from edge to edge, from top to bottom, so you don't have part of the artwork hidden by a lip of a frame. So a traditional frame, you put the artwork in from the back, that lip in the front holds it in place. With a floater frame, you attach the artwork from the back so that the complete front edge of the frame is visible.
Now, Dana, is that one that's sitting right there in the black frame next to you?
This is a floater frame so that you can see.
I was going to say, do you want to go to that overhead camera? That way they can see it nice and close that way. Oop,
so this, you have the complete edge. There's that float space between the artwork and the interior of the frame that allows you to just have the frame, get the protection of the frame, get that finished look, but without covering any of the artwork at all. And it's a great way to frame panels as well as stretched canvas. But there's a few things that panels needed that weren't available through the frames that we saw out in the market. The first thing we did was to expand the base of the frame so that it would line up. I'm going to take this a minute. We expanded the base of the frame so that the cradle of the panel aligned completely with that base. We also expanded the profile of the frame so that the artwork sits below that face of the frame, really protecting the artwork. We also included countersunk holes so that the screws don't need to bridge a space between the frame and the artwork. They just go directly into that, that cradle, but they're also allowing for the screw to sit down below the frame so that your artwork can sit flush. And the last thing that we did was we wanted to make sure to include all the hardware that you need to frame the artwork with the frame itself.
I love that. I always end up having to hunt for hardware.
It's nice because then you've got everything you need. If you don't have to run back to the store or place another order, you're all set to go. Floater frame is available in 4 colors. We've got maple, like what I have here, as well as a walnut color, a white, and a black frame. It's also available in 13 sizes through Jerry's Artorama, ranging from as small as 5x7 up to 24 by 30 inches. We also have 2 depths of frames. So if you have artwork that is shallower, we have a 7/8 inch frame, and we also have frames for artwork that it needs a deeper 1.5 inch depth. So we did one more thing to try to give artists as many options as they can with how they want to display their work. And so we offer 2 different styles. We have the thin style, which has a 1/4 inch facing and a narrower space between the artwork and the interior of the frame. And for the 7/8 inch and 1.5 inch frame depths, they have different outer profiles. So the 7/8 inch frame just accommodates that 7/8 inch depth, and the 1.5 inch frame accommodates just that 1.5 inch depth. Now we did a different thing with the bold frames.
Let me switch back over.
Sure.
There we go.
So with the bold frames, whether you have a 7/8 inch or 1.5 inch frame, those outer profiles are the same. Let's see if we can get this in here. So they're both the same outer profile, regardless of what that interior depth is. So what that allows an artist to do is you can frame artwork of different depths using the same uniform frame depth. So if you have flat panels, cradled panels, 1.5 inch, 7/8, 3/4, you can get everything into frames so that they all look uniform on the wall. So how do you know which frame to use and which one's going to be right for your artwork? There's a couple things that come into play, especially the size of your artwork and the depth of your artwork. So if you're using, if your artwork is 8 by 8 inches, then you want an 8 by 8 floater frames. The sizes for the floater frames are references to the size of the artwork that fits inside it, not the exterior dimensions.
Okay,
So,
I feel like you need to repeat that again because everyone always has that question.
oh yeah.
Always.
So with frames, with floater frames, the size of the frame on the label or on the website or in the store, that is talking about the artwork that fits inside of it, not the exterior dimension. So if I have 8 by 8 artwork, I want an 8 by 8 floater frame. If I have 10 by 10 artwork, I want a 10 by 10 floater frame, and so on. The next one that's even more tricky is how deep or shallow is your artwork. So if it's 1/8 inch, if it's 7/8 inch or 3/4 inch or 1.5 inches deep, you're going to want to pick the frame depth that's appropriate as well. So if I have a 7/8 inch artwork, I'm going to want a 7/8 inch frame. And that's going to fit in there just perfectly, sit at the correct level in the frame. And that's going to allow you to just get that right size of the depth of the artwork into the right size of the depth of the frame.
Now, I have a quick question here. So
Mhm.
when you say it's a 7/8 of an inch, that's the panel and the artwork that you're working on, as well as it accommodates for the depth of your artwork within the frame. Does it sit just under it, or is it nice and flush?
It does. It sits just below it, so that when we expanded the base, extended the profile of the frame, we did it so that the artwork would not stick out,
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah.
And that way, the frame does its job of protecting the front and face of your artwork too. But like the dimensions of the frame, the 8x8 frame goes in an is used for an 8x8 panel. The depth is the same too. So if I have a 7/8 inch panel and I put it in an 1.5 inch frame,
Mhm.
that it's not going to sit at the correct position in the frame. You can use it if you like a shadow box, that's an option for you.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always work the other direction. So if I have a 7/8 inch frame and I put an 1.5 inch artwork in there, then that's not going to protect that artwork at all.
Mhm. I feel like having the deeper option with the shallower canvas panel, that might even do really well for somebody who works with something with texture, like people who work in pasto.
And that would give you that space then to really build up the depth of the artwork or add collage elements or whatever the case might be to take advantage of that space.
Very nice.
How do you know what color to use for your artwork? Well, with 4 pretty general color options, black, white, maple, and walnut, we have colors or tones to accommodate just about any artwork style or direction that you like. At the Ampersand website, ampersandart.com, on the floater frame page, we also have a frame preview tool where you can upload your artwork, just drag it into the tool and see what your artwork looks like in each of those available colors. And so that allows you to make that decision based off of how the artwork looks with that color frame.
Now, speaking of color, I actually just had a question from the chat. Somebody was asking if you wanted to paint one of these and make it a custom color, what would you recommend as far as like type of paint process? Would you need to sand it?
Absolutely, great question. So if you want to customize a floater frame, there are lots of ways to do it. If you want to customize the color through painting, acrylic-based color works great. You can just use acrylic paints to paint the frame. You can also use spray paints, work well. If you are going to be changing the color of a walnut or maple frame, you can paint directly into that. With the painted frames, black and white, I would recommend that you give them a light sanding just to create a little texture so it's not quite so smooth when you go to paint on that frame. You can also apply things like gold leaf to customize the frame, or just really let the frame be an extension of the artwork if you like.
We do love a sparkle moment, for sure.
You got it.
Add the gold.
So, I mean, enough talking about the frames. Let's put one to work. So I'm going to take a black 1.5 inch 8x8 bold frame. So I'm going to need an 8x8 1.5 inch artwork. So I've got one of those. The artwork that I've got on here already is nice, but needs to be protected. So I need to get it into a frame. I'm just going to start by opening the box of the frame. Inside, I have the hardware that I need to do the framing.
Now, I have a quick question because I do love really good packaging. That box that you just opened, where it was sitting within the frame, is that showing you where your panel is going to sit within the frame?
Partially, yes. So
That's genius.
it goes.
I like that. I'm a visual person, and that helps me so much.
Gotta pull this through. So it has a corner that encloses and protects the outside. We also have cardboard corner protectors when you buy it through Jerry's online or through the store. And then the interior of the box sits where your artwork would sit once you frame it.
That
So it
is
lets you see what it looks like.
Yeah. I know everybody who's an artist. We tend to be visual people, so that just is beautiful packaging. I just gotta applaud you guys for that one. That is stunning.
Of course, the artwork comes with, the floater frame comes with instructions on how to use it. And the hardware that it includes is everything you need to frame it and hang it on the wall. We've got the hanging wire, the screw eyes, the screws to attach the artwork, bumper pads for the back, and even the hook and nail to hang it on the wall are included. So we're just going to get started here. The tools that I'm going to need to frame, I will need to show up with something. So we recommend a drill. Let's go this way. With a 3/32 drill bit, something smaller than the size of the screw so that the screw gets a pilot hole but won't fall back out. A Phillips head screwdriver. Some scissors, a pencil. A ruler so you can tell where everything's going to go. And the first part that I'm going to do is to attach those screw eyes. So I need to know where to put them. I'm going to take my ruler, my pencil, and the rule of thumb is to come about a third of the way down from the top of the frame. So this is, looks like 9 3/8. So I'm going to go a little less. I'm just going to round to 3 1/4 here. I'm going to drill my pilot holes.
Now, I do have a question on, are you drilling that flat on the back of it?
I'm drilling it into the space of the frame.
Can you push that forward just a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a little ledge here on the frame, and I'm just going to go right into there. Get my drill bit lined back up.
Okay.
And I don't
So
want to
you
go
wanted it to be in there so that your wire, you're putting it there so your wire won't be sticking out past the back of your frame, right?
Right. So what I'm doing, so that way it keeps the back of the frame flush, but also I don't need to go too deeply because I just need to create a little pilot hole for the next step, which is the screw eyes. So I'm just gonna.
Sorry, I know it's very awkward to do this, try to get leverage and push it forward. Round of applause for the guy being able to push it forward and still do it on camera.
So there's a little trick that I like to use too, which is if it starts getting tight, you can just use the other screw eye or the nail for the wall.
I also
and
use a
just
screwdriver sometimes if it's big enough.
absolutely. It gives
Yeah.
you some real leverage and allows you to turn more like a key. And so
Mhm.
when you get it to the right place, you just want to make sure that the hole is visible when you're looking at the back so that
Mhm.
you can line it up with the opposite side here.
Now, I do have a question because I am not completely the most coordinated person in the world. Would it be possible to do the eye hole, that hardware, the eye hooks? Is it called an eye hook? I'm like
These screw eyes, yeah,
screw eyes. Is it possible to do those on the inside of your artwork?
absolutely. So if
Okay.
you have a cradle, you can have that screw eye and the hanging wire on the interior of your cradle instead. So that gives you a little bit more space if you want to
Mhm.
do that. It also allows you then to reframe it later without having to redo that wiring process. So
Okay.
if you've got a cradle and you want to go into the artwork that way, that's certainly a good option to you.
Now, would you, because you are putting it in a frame then, would you want to have your wire be a little bit looser instead of really,
I
really tight, or?
I usually recommend making the wire tighter unless the artwork is really big. So if it's big, allowing a little slack, that weight from a larger artwork will help pull it flush to the wall. I'm going to be pulling the wire. When I get to the wire part, I'm going to be pulling the wire tighter for this one.
Okay, perfect.
So now that I've got the screw eyes on, which are easier, this is something that's just a little easier to do before you get the artwork in there. The next step is to get your artwork in and turn the frame back over and have it facing up.
Mhm.
So that will allow you to see what it's going to look like in the frame. I'll pull it back here. There we go. Okay, so I don't want it to move around while I'm framing. So the next step is to secure it in place in the frame. And so what I'm going to do, you can use anything that won't scratch the interior of the frame or scratch your artwork. That's thin enough to fit in this space can be used as a spacer. I'm just going to use the cardboard corner protectors from the frame itself. I'm just going to tear the pieces and fold them and slide them in.
Okay, that's genius because I always struggle with this step. I'm like, how do I get it to be perfect and not wiggle around in there? This is
So
why we have you on the show. Love it.
foam core works, other things work, but if you've got strips of cardboard from the packaging, this is just a great option and you have it right there already.
And it's recycling. I love it.
And it's, yeah, you're reusing something and then you can just recycle it all. You're not needing anything special to do this step. So I'm just folding in and adding more cardboard until the artwork is secure and doesn't move around in there. This also allows me then to wiggle it a little bit, pull it, make sure it's in position and flush. I'm going to add just a little bit more cardboard just to make sure that it's really in there tight.
Now, is that really the key to making sure that it doesn't fall out of there when you flip it over?
It is. So if it's loose and you turn it face down, because of that lip, that face of the frame being higher up than the artwork itself, the artwork will drop if it's not secured in place.
Mm-hmm.
So the next thing to do, once I've got it centered the way I like it, is to turn it then onto something that is raised, but not larger than the artwork itself. You don't want to damage the artwork, so you want it to be flat and soft enough that it's not scratching or damaging the artwork. But I'm just going to use this 8x8 Claybord here, and I'm going to turn the artwork with the frame on it face down onto that, so that that's pushing up on the artwork, keeping the artwork from slipping out of position as I put pressure on the back to attach the screw eyes. There are a couple options for attaching the screw eyes. Let me get the screw eyes themselves. So the artwork attaches to the frame at 4 points. We've got 4 screws to do that. They are self-tapping screws, so they're sharp enough to go into the cradle without needing to pre-drill, and that'll hold it in place. I've got a Phillips head screwdriver, so I could use that. I could also use a Phillips head bit on the drill and use the drill to do that too. So I'm going to do both of those things here, just to show each. So I don't have to push down or use a lot of pressure to get that screw to go into place. And because of that countersunk hole, it is sitting below the frame itself and nice and flat in there.
I really do love that. The countersinking is ingenious, because I always worry about, if you don't have that, then your screws are now going to be sticking up past the frame, and it could scratch things, you know?
And then it just gives a nice looking back of the frame too. Yeah. And for comparison, I'm going to use the drill to put these ones in. Artwork over. And just like that, the artwork's in place. But before I turn it back over, I'm going to go ahead and attach the screw eyes. I'm sorry, the hanging wire. You get 20-pound hanging wire with each floater frame.
Mm-hmm.
It's long enough to accommodate the largest frame we make, so you should have some left over with an 8x8 frame. The way to tell how much you need is just to double the space. So I'm going to use the wire to measure that space. Then I'm going to double that. So I'm just going to cut it right here with the scissors. If you have wire cutters, that works too. The next thing to do is to take the wire we have and go down through the top of the screw eyes. Pull it tight, wrap it through the screw eye again, and then start to coil it on itself. I like to do one side and then go back into it and start the other side. Because I've got this side started, it's not going to slip around in there and it'll hold its position. The wire is plastic coated, so it's non-slip wire. That also means that it'll hold its position really well once you get it coiled around itself.
Now that is very satisfying to watch. I have a lot of artwork to frame. Would you like to do that for all of them? Because
sure, why not?
you did a great job. It's
I
always
know,
just satisfying when it's a
where
tight
there are some
coil.
really great frames. Yeah. So got the wire on, got the screw eyes. The last thing to do on the back side is to put those self-adhesive rubber bumpers on. I'm just going at the bottom back corners.
There we go.
So you
Nice.
see that?
Do you recommend putting them at the top too, or just the bottom?
I recommend just at the bottom. You can do them at the top too. That keeps it more parallel with the wall. But at the bottom, we include 2 so that it holds its position, doesn't slip, and then it allows a little bit of airspace behind the artwork too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in place. I can go ahead and remove all of that cardboard that I stuck in here.
That looks lovely.
And I've got my perfectly framed artwork ready to hang. I've got my hook and my nail to just get it right on the wall and enjoy it.
Nice. Now I have a question now that that is nice and finished. Somebody was asking if, sorry, I'm trying to scroll back up to the question here. If you wanted to paint the edge of your panel, do you recommend painting that before you even start attempting the framing process?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the question of would you want to paint the cradle before you began framing? Absolutely. That allows you to get to the sides of the cradle without trying to keep the frame clean or trying to get your brush into places where it's hard to get it. So if you're going to do that, just do it before you frame it and you're ready to go. That's a great opportunity to contrast or match that color too. So I could paint the cradle black to match the black frame I use, or I could paint it with a gold paint or something reflective to give a different look inside that frame too. But yes, definitely do that before you begin the framing process to make it easier on yourself.
Now, I also had another question, just to clarify, those screws that you put into the back of that frame, that went through the frame and into the cradle of your canvas to secure it on.
That's right. So those actually go into the cradle or the stretcher of, if you're using canvas, into the stretcher, directly into that. And that's what holds it into the frame, so that you don't have anything on the front of the frame holding it in place. It's completely secured by those screws on the back.
Very nice. It's so clean.
And that was just a complete, we include all the hardware. You've got everything you need, the right frame, the right size, the right depth. It's just a really easy solution to present your artwork.
Love it. And it looks fabulous. Very clean, very contemporary.
That's what framing can do, right? It can really elevate your artwork and make it look finished and nice and all done. And it makes it easier to hang on the wall and feel secure about it too.
For sure.
But floater frames can also be used for other types of panels too. So if I have a flat panel and I want to frame my artwork with that.
Hold on, I'm going to go back over to that overhead. You want to show that one more time? How thin that is?
Yeah, so this is just an 1/8 inch thin panel, and I'm going to mount a print to that panel, and then I'll get around to showing you how to frame it. But what I wanted to show you is mounting artwork to panels like this is not just a good idea for increasing your options for presentation and how you can frame the artwork, but it also gives strength and structure to a flexible print or a paper or canvas. And so that helps to prevent creasing or punctures or damage to the artwork as well. So the first part of this, I'm just going to get my fancy piece of cardboard out here.
Always have to have one.
Nice. So basically, the way to attach the artwork to the panel is with an adhesive, and I'm going to be using Krylon spray adhesive. You don't want to get spray adhesive all over your table, all over your driveway, wherever it is you're going to be doing this. And I would recommend that you do it in a well-ventilated area. So I start by turning the artwork face down. Make sure
back over to
I have a clean surface so that I'm not setting the artwork into something. Just set the artwork face down. And I take my panel, and I'm using Claybord here, and I'm setting it face down onto the print so I can get an idea of how much space I have and where I need to set that panel after I get the adhesive in place. So you'll see I have a little bit of space around the artwork here, around the panel, so you can see the artwork peeking out. This is the easiest way to make this more successful for you. If the artwork is exactly the same size, you're going to have a hard time getting, in this case, 8 inches by 8 inches to match 8 inches by 8 inches cut separately. So I have an 8-inch by 8-inch print that I'm setting on this 8-inch by 8-inch Claybord, and you can see that Claybord barely peeking out. That also means that when I go to put the print on, if I'm lining up the side perfectly, it's still going to be hard to line it up without having it slightly crooked, especially larger pieces. So allowing yourself that flexibility of trimming the edges really saves on having to redo a project or the stresses of not getting it right the first time.
Oh yeah, and I have done that so many times before, and I can tell you without a doubt that spray adhesive does not have a whole lot of wiggle room. It doesn't let you wiggle it around to try and line it up.
So you want to get it right the first time, and the best way to do that is allow yourself a little space that you can trim off the excess. So I've got my artwork face down. I've got my spray adhesive. I'm just going to pop the can off. Anytime you're using a spray adhesive or a spray fixative, anything from an aerosol, you want to make sure that it's not clumping or clogged in the nozzle. So you always want to start the spray off to the side and away from the object that you're going to spray, so you don't get sputtering or inconsistent spraying on whatever it is you're using it. I'm going to pretend that I'm spraying some adhesive across this. It doesn't,
because you're not actually going to do it today, because that would be very bad for your breathing in general.
It would make the room uncomfortable for the last part of this demo today, for sure. But it doesn't take a lot of spray adhesive. You just want to make sure that you get coverage complete. I usually go just back and forth, making sure that I get complete coverage from top to bottom on the artwork. You don't want to move the artwork around once you've done that, because you might get adhesive that you've gotten on the side onto the face of your artwork, and that's tricky to get off too. So you just leave it in position. I take my panel, and I'm remembering where it was when I set it on to test it to begin with. I line it up, I can drop it in place, and I start by pressing it with my hands. And so that starts the initial connection, that bond between the print and the Claybord panel. Now, so the reason I'm using a Claybord panel today is because it is already sealed and primed. And so it has an acid-free surface that's absorbent and smooth. It's great for mounting artwork too, because of that acid-free quality. You're not adding a texture. You're less likely to get air bubbles with a nice smooth surface like that too. So now my cooking show change out.
Hey, it's already done.
Oh,
surprise.
Yeah, I got it on there. Okay, so I can turn it over. I'm going to go ahead and move my adhesive covered cardboard, and I'm going to bring in a cutting mat, set my artwork in place. So I've got it in place there, but I want to make sure that if there are any air bubbles, I take a soft rubber brayer like this. I have a Speedball 4-inch brayer for this 8-inch panel. And I'm just going to go from the inside out to make sure that I don't have any air bubbles hiding in there, because air bubbles like to grow. And so if you have an air bubble trapped underneath there and you let it sit, that can cause sections of the print to come apart from the panel. And so you want to get those while there's still some movement before the adhesive completely sets up. Nice. So I've got that part done.
And just as a side note, you want to make sure that the brayer is very clean.
Yes, you don't want to be That's right. Another option, you can definitely put something clean across your artwork when you're doing that too, whether that be a piece of glassine or newsprint, whatever the case may be. But yeah, a clean brayer, you don't want to be painting with a brayer onto your newly mounted artwork. So I've got it in place. I've got it turned over. The next thing to do is just to trim away that extra from the sides. The wooden panel of the Claybord itself really works well for this. So I'm just going to line my, I have an Excel craft knife here. Number 1, this is just a nice fine point. I'm gonna line it up with one side. Using the side of the Claybord panel as a guide, I'm just gonna trim away each of those 4 sides.
Well, that's satisfying.
It is. And then it makes such a nice look at the end.
Ta-da!
So I've got my artwork nicely mounted onto a rigid Claybord, nice and secure, and ready to frame if I like.
Now, I am curious on how you're going to attach this into one of your frames. I know you said you were going to, but my brain is having a hard time understanding how that flat panel is going to attach to that with screws.
Yes. So if I were to just take this 8x8, so, okay, I'm going to back up a little bit. I'm going to be using a 7/8 inch frame. When I'm choosing which frame to use for my artwork, I want to make sure that I'm getting the depth that is appropriate for the artwork that I'm using. I'm using 7/8 inch for a few reasons. The first being, when I'm choosing a depth or what's called a rabbet of a frame, I want it to be as close to the depth or thickness of my artwork without allowing the artwork to extend above it. So 7/8 is definitely going to be closer in depth to my artwork than 1.5 inches. So again, like with the other one, if I wanted a floater frame look, or I really wanted to build up the texture, there are ways to do that too.
Mm-hmm.
But to get it to the intended position in the frame, I want to use the frame with the depth that's as close as possible to the depth or thickness of the artwork. As you saw in there, it's still sitting pretty low in the frame. So what Ampersand has done is with our, this way, 7/8 inch frames, the hardware pack looks a little different than the hardware pack that we have for the 1.5 inch frames. In that it includes riser blocks. So these blocks of wood are only included with the 7/8 inch frames. If you get the 1.5 inch frames, you're not going to see these, and that frame is going to be too deep, even if you did. But these riser blocks are intended to extend your artwork in the frame so that it sits at the correct position in the frame as if it had a cradle.
That makes so much sense. I'm still not sure how that attaches, but you're about to show us, aren't you?
I will. And you can see that they're not square on the side, they're rectangular. And that's because the tall direction, if you use them in the tall direction, that's for 1/8 inch artwork. If you have a 1/4 inch thick artwork, just turn it sideways. And so that allows for that extra 1/8 of an inch that you need for your artwork to fit.
That is
also included are these 1/8 inch risers. These little 1/8 inch risers are perfect for adding that extra 1/8 of an inch if you have 3/4 inch cradled panels, 3/4 inch stretch canvas, that'll get your artwork to the correct position too. So the
Cool.
process for doing this is I'll take my riser blocks. I'll want to make sure that I have them all facing the correct and same directions. I don't want to have some in position for the 3/4 in position for the 1/4 inch artwork and some in position for the 1/8 inch artwork. So I've got them all the same direction. They're in position for the 1/8 inch artwork, which is what this Claybord is. And I'm just going to use a little bit of wood glue. So wood glue would be a permanent bond. If I want a temporary or reversible bond, I could use silicone adhesive. I've got my glue on there. I just want to make sure that it's centered on that side. And I'll push it down to get a nice bond with the glue.
Now, are you putting that up to the edge or is it just a little bit farther away?
Great question. So I have it slightly in from the edge. And the reason that I've done that is so that it's well hidden behind the artwork when I get it framed. And it still lines up well with the holes of the frame, those countersunk holes for the screws. So these risers do two main things. They extend the artwork to the correct position, but they also then, like the cradle did, allow for an area where those screws that attach the artwork to the frame to screw into.
Now, I did see that are you using a paper towel just to like smear the glue around?
So I'm just kind of making sure that it's on the full thing and I don't have a lot of excess. I don't want squirting out and getting on the front of my artwork. But yeah, I just use a little paper towel for that to make sure it's getting the coverage I need and getting rid of any extra.
Nice.
It doesn't take very much.
No, not at all. And I mean, the risers are made of wood. The back of the Claybord is MDF,
Wood.
correct? So that's
It's-
also wood.
Yeah, so the back of the Claybord, our substrate is hardboard. And so MDF is a medium density fiber board. You go one step above that, you've got high density, which is HDF. And you go one step above that and you get our hardboard in terms of density. And so that equals really superior warp and moisture resistance.
Very nice. But also with the gluing the wood risers down, you're gluing wood to wood with wood glue. So that's going to be forever.
Good permanent bond. Yeah. So the next step is that you really want to let that glue dry. Because if you go to try to screw it into the frame now, these are not held securely until that glue dries. So as you screw in and create pressure on that riser, it'll twist and move in position. So you want to let that really set up.
Very nice. Oh, and I actually forgot to ask, the wood glue, is that included in the hardware or do you just need to get wood glue?
The wood glue is not included. We recommend wood glue if you want a permanent bond, 100% silicone adhesive if you want a reversible bond, but there are other ways to attach your artwork too. You can use adhesive Velcro, you can use different adhesives based on the length of time you want that artwork to stay attached and how big or how securely that artwork is, how securely you want to hold that in the frame. I usually recommend if you're going to plan on keeping that artwork in the frame that you use wood glue, because that will be that permanent irreversible bond.
Now,
So,
I also know somebody was asking how long does the glue need to dry, and I would assume just read the label of whatever glue you're using.
Right. So it varies, but we usually recommend overnight is a good place to start. Some silicone glues recommend 48 hours, so you'll want to pay attention to that. But wood glue overnight is good, and it's secure and on there really tightly. So you're good to go in terms of continuing with the framing then.
Nice.
So I'll go through the process the same as I did with the cradled panel. So the main difference is that you have those risers. All the other hardware is the same. You still have the wire, the screw eyes, the bumper pads, the screws, the hook, the nail, everything else is the same. It's just those risers and those flat 1/8" risers that make that hardware pack a little different. So like with the cradled panel, I would start by drilling the holes for the screw eyes.
And this one you can't put on the cradle on your artwork because there is no cradle.
That's right. So you've got your riser blocks. I'll get it into place in this frame that's already got the wire in place for purposes of the demonstration. So I've got the screw eyes in place. I can turn it back over and I need to center it in the artwork in the frame. I'm going to go back to using my cardboard packaging. So a trick that we've learned over the years with floater frame is that if you're using the riser blocks, because those positions are at the corners, it can rotate like this if you just put the spacers at the corner at the center of each of those sides. So putting the spacers at the corners instead helps to keep the artwork from shifting during the framing process.
That is good to know because I would be over there struggling.
So I'm just putting in a few extras. There's plenty of cardboard that comes to protect those corners in shipping. So that just goes to good use, securing the artwork during framing too.
Oh yeah.
That's in there, I guess. Okay. So I'm just gonna work at this a little bit and get it centered to where I'd like it for the framing. It's in place. Again, I'm going to want to turn it face down onto something smaller than the artwork that allows me some security to keep it from falling out of place while I'm using the screws.
Mm-hmm.
Got my 4 screws. I drill.
That is the quietest drill I've ever heard, well, not heard in my life. The camera doesn't pick it up at all. But it's wonderful to see that it actually does. I can very much see that it goes straight into those risers. And I think that really visually answers that one of our viewers' questions of where does it go through. But that's lovely.
And so, yeah, it just lines up, goes into that riser.
Mm-hmm.
The cradle's not there, but by using that riser, you're essentially creating a section of a cradle just where you need it. So it extends the artwork again and gives you a spot to attach that screw.
And or possibly some area where you can put LED lights in and have it backlit.
I've seen it. That's a great idea.
Oh, yes.
So it's in place, so I can take the cardboard out now.
Perfect.
So again, with those risers, it sits just below the face of the frame, protects the artwork. It's got the wire, the bumper pads on. It's ready to go.
Very nice. Now, I did have a quick question from one of our viewers. She is in a gallery that does not accept the little screw eyes on her artwork. So as an alternative, I know you can get other types of hardware. Does that work well with like the D-ring hardware?
You can absolutely use D-ring hardware with a floater frame. You just need to supply it yourself, but you could absolutely attach those to the sides or into the interior of your cradle if you have one.
Perfect.
And so that would be an option for you too. Yeah.
Nice. That looks lovely. And I think we also have gotten through most of the questions about the framing process that everyone's been asking about. I know there's been a question about varnishing watercolors and things like that, and what type of paper you were using on your print. But I'm trying to find them. Sorry, I'm trying to scroll through and find them on the chat here. There's a lot of chat. I love it. So yeah, sorry, I have to scroll through. And I cannot seem to find it. I'm sorry. But with the paper though, for your print, what type of paper was that?
So the easiest way to go is heavier paper. If you're using really thin paper, you're more likely to see wrinkles or air bubbles. So with a paper that has a bit of a heavier quality to it, let me see if I got it. Yes, I do. So this is a little bit heavier. You can hear it. It's not cardstock, but it's heavier than printer paper. And you can use things like printer paper, but you want to be really careful to get that on without a wrinkle, because it can. And so the thicker paper, it just eliminates that whole headache.
Oh yeah. But you could very easily also mount original watercolors in the same way that you were just showing.
Absolutely. Original watercolors, works on paper, works on canvas or linen, things that you want to support with a rigid panel and give it that structure and protection, but also really opening the options for you for how to display and frame your work. Wonderful.
Well, that was an amazing show. Thank you so much, Dana. I'm going to actually bring myself back on here. Yay, there I am. Hi. Thank you for showing us that whole process, because I honestly had no idea how to mount a flat 1/8 of an inch panel. I have struggled with that for a very long time, but it's an incredible, very simple solution that I'm gonna have to use from now on.
It's an easy solution. That's right. And our website and our YouTube and our Facebook and Instagram, there's a lot of information and videos and things people can check out to go through these processes or learn more about Ampersand products too.
For sure. And if you guys are interested in the website, what would that website be so that they can go visit you?
It's ampersandart.com. Make sure you get that art in there so you go to the right place. And there's a section called resources that'll take you to a lot of information and videos. But again, at the floater frame page itself, there is that preview tool, so you can see what your artwork looks like in the different styles and colors of floater frames too.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely plan on doing that myself for all of the artwork that I have to frame. Well, again, Dana, thank you so much for being on here and showing us this process. It was a lot of information that I think any artist out there can use. You know, it's going to be very useful for all of us. So I appreciate you taking the time and joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks to you and Jerry's Artorama. Really glad to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, everybody, please give Dana some love down in the chats. Tell him how awesome he did, because I know there's several people that have been like, I'm only ever using these frames again. Ever. They look wonderful. But of course, we're gonna have Dana back on next year. We're already planning things. I'm excited. But of course, if you did like this, make sure you hit the like button and share it with your friends. And of course, join us for the future Jerry's Live. I can't say next week because next week we are not going to be live. It is Halloween. So I hope you all a safe and happy Halloween. Go out there and celebrate with family and friends. We will not be live. You know, you guys are going to be out trick-or-treating. So, but you can join us the following week, which is going to be November 7th. I'm going to be live and I'm going to be doing a fall paint along where we are going to paint some pumpkins. I'm very excited. It's going to be in oils and it's going to be fun. It's going to be messy, which is very unlike me, but it'll be fun. And then we can frame it with some ampersand frames.
There you go.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us and we will see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.